Hello folks! I just remembered to turn the microphone on. It's always a good start, isn't it? Wow, well I had a month off. I'm out of practice. Gosh, it was really weird. I almost put something out and I've just realised people are going to get really upset by my dangly, the dangly balls. Sounds so wrong. There we go. If I do that, it's very hard to, can I do that? Yeah, okay. I know last time it wasn't appreciated that my dangly balls were there. I don't know how to make it that I can actually see. Right, there we go. Look at that. Chandelier. Wow, yeah, I had a month off. I'm out of practice. I forgot to sort the balls out. It's good to be here. I feel like bright lights. These are still flickering, so I've got one light directly on me and it feels like I'm about to be interrogated, so hopefully not. Okay, so hello to everybody in chat who I haven't already said hello to. So I think it was Jeff was the last person I saw. Let's see who else is dating. Hi Squeak. And then Diecast Mike Esco, hello. And Stephen, hi Kathy and friends. Everyone okay, says Stephen. Well, I'm okay. I wasn't here a month ago and I debated, do I put something up saying I'm not having a live stream or is that more confusing? And I wasn't here because I was in North Wales on holiday with my family. Now, going on holiday with my family is two 82-year-old parents and a handicapped sister. So I did feel like I spent a lot of time walking very slowly because, bless it, both my parents are still mobile and I'm very blessed to have them. I fully accept that, but we didn't do a lot of walking. There was quite a bit of driving around, beautiful scenery. It was sunshine and showers, but we had the most beautiful house. You could sit there and look out at the sea, which is why we picked it. In Ross-on-Sea, it was just stunningly beautiful. Just really nice. And I spent most of the week when we weren't out doing stuff playing Satisfactory, which suited me. I was very happy. If you don't know it, it's a factory game. I think I mentioned it last time. So yeah, that's what I was doing. I came back and now it's Asteroids. More about that in a minute. Jeffrey says, nice hair. Yeah, it's just, I wash it on a Sunday, but normally it goes straight in a ponytail because it's in the way. But today was my sister's birthday party. It was actually her birthday on Friday. So I thought, oh, I'll have the hair down for once. I sometimes wonder why I have long hair when it stays in a ponytail 99.9995% of the time. But yeah, no. Anyway, thank you. So, what are we talking about this week? Well, asteroids. I will admit, it's been a long time since I actually did the last Kickstarter, it seems like. And then I look back and think, well, no, Medwing was this year. I have done one this year already. And we're only in April. Wow. And time starts to blur. But I had quite a long time off in between Medwing and this with the holiday. I had to go pick my dad up. He lives in Essex, doesn't drive. So by the time I'd lost a day there, a day back, because it's a 3-hour each way, make sure he's all right, stay overnight. I seem to have lost 2 solid weeks to this holiday. And I am now getting back into the train of designing stuff. I have test prints sat on my desk. That probably wasn't the most inspiring thing I could pick up. In fact, I don't have any inspiring test prints down here. They're all upstairs. And I'll show you some pictures of them in a minute. And I've been thinking a lot about asteroids. Why asteroids? Well, I did Outbound Station, a space station. And then I did the Medwing, which is part of that. It's like a med station. And I really fancied doing end to end, like industrial process complex. So I'm starting at the mining end with asteroids, mining, all that kind of stuff. So it's miners, all of which are upstairs, picture coming in a minute, miners, hoppers, conveyors, different types of miners, space worm tunnels, normal tunnels, mining tunnels, all that kind of malarkey, and asteroids. And then the next one is going to be the works, which is like the industrial district where all of your chemicals and stuff get processed. One of the things I'm going to mine is plasma. So I think it's just going to be quite fun. Just always good to have something that excites you, I think, when you're designing. So chat is, chat is quite quiet. But Stephen asked, is the building behind you on your right shoulder? My right shoulder, so I'm guessing you mean that one. That building? No. That building? Stephen? He asked, is it a new building? No, that's Owen 30 building I did very quickly as a scratch build one to get the numbers up for my achievement program. It was built from coffee stirrers, I think, stained, etc., etc., bleached and stained. And it's got a few scratch built windows and stuff in it. But it was part of my Owen 30 layout when I had one, which I then got rid of. In some ways, I think I'd still be modelling railways if I kept Owen 30, but because it's smaller and I just would be able to cope with it more. I know the scale isn't bigger, but the modules were smaller. But in the end, I got rid of it and kept the HO, and then, as you know, bounced out of it all, which was partly politics and partly I wanted to go into designing, which is what I now do. And designing for sci-fi is so much easier than designing for anything else. So I was looking at my right shoulder thinking, that's a zebra. So, I mean, I actually have another horse. So I can never point. So horse, UK shop. A zebra, bought in South Africa, got knocked off when the picture fell off the wall, so it's cracked and been mended. Another horse, UK shop, bullseye, classic, from Toy Story 2. So there we go. Stephen, coffee stirrers are a great go-to for modelling. Yes, my mum bought me 5,000 coffee stirrers from Macro as a Christmas present once. I still have 4,500 of them. If anybody who knows me in person wants a box of coffee stirrers, I probably would happily give you them. I seem to have quite a few, but I just have to find them first. But they are brilliant. And these ones are some of them are a bit warped, and that gives you some interest when you're building them. My only problem with them is getting them to stain so they look that silvery wood, which is actually slightly lighter than if you put on a black wash stain. But there we go. I kind of miss the whole scratch building modelling. I can't remember the last time I actually modelled. I now spend all my time producing 3D prints, and I have all these great plans to do more videos for YouTube. I've got City waiting for it. I've got models that I want to build and do. And I got into a really good habit. I don't know about you, but I got into a really good habit of modelling on a lap tray of an evening, watching, I know we were on SG1 rerun Stargate, and assembling minis so I could bring them back, spray paint them. And then for my birthday in March, I got given, which I bought myself, those brushes, the AK brushes. They're like paint brushes. And John was telling me, it's John Bracken, you can see in chat, that he went to Tesco's and they'd got some quite reasonable priced paint markers upstairs, and he wondered how they compared. I don't know, but they are there. So, there's this whole thing of I was going to go and paint loads of minis. Then I got distracted by Satisfactory. So now I spend 99% of my evening playing Satisfactory, having been on holiday. My dad had a stroke in end of Feb, beginning of March. So we went down there and I spent the whole weekend playing it. I played it so much I got headaches from playing it too much. But then I played it for a week on holiday. I play it every evening. So I'm like, my mum said to me the other day, I think you might be addicted, dear. I'm like, yeah, you don't notice I've had a compulsive personality. So anyway, John will tell you it's a main topic of conversation at lunchtime, because I've normally just been playing it when I come and see him. I sort of log on and do half an hour at lunchtime while for eating my lunch at the same time. So yeah, it's been a bit of an addiction, but it has actually inspired some of the miners that are going in to the stuff that we're doing for Asteroids. So that's been really, really useful. I'd actually been thinking a lot about Star Wars The Works, which is part of Coruscant. I've been wanting to do that for a couple of years now. So this felt more of a segue from Outbound Station, which is a space station. And I've got some important decisions to make, which are quite difficult, you know, like how do you make a hypertube? This is my hypertube. This is one of the few things I do have downstairs. So I've got the base mechanism working, but you know, how do I make that look like something that someone can travel through? It's a good question, hey? Anyway, oops. And how do I attach that to an asteroid is another question. So I've been working on stuff like that. So let me show you where we are so far, which I think is movie 2. So this is where we've got to, this is where I've got to on my test prints. They are getting spread out a bit more. I'm doing more grid, as you can see. And these are half asteroids, and you can see they're printed in a single colour, but the base underneath them is my starry base, and it's black with the little white dots from an actual bit of the night sky. And there's some asteroid bases and all sorts of things. There's some mines. That's a sonic mine. And I'm going to bring these all forward and just spread them out a bit. I've also got, so this is the asteroid belt section. I'm also doing a large asteroid, which is about a foot square, but it's modular, so you can make it any size you wanted. Sort of asteroid top. And then there's going to be, in this gap there, oops, it didn't take very long, did it, that video? In the end gap, the white gap, there's going to be two 2-foot sort of modular asteroids. One with round worm tunnels, which are sort of starting to be test printed. You can just see there the start of the worm tunnels. And then some that are just going to be normal square, maybe a bit inspired by Battlefront 2 or some of these other Star Wars, but generic, anything will work. And I'm hoping it'll be really useful for people who perhaps want something to go alongside their spaceships. You know, you want your spaceship to look like it's flying. Put it on a couple of blocks so it's up in midair, and put a little asteroid field around it. If you don't want it to be big asteroids, there's these little ones on tiles. So I see that sort of side mostly as a display side. I feel it'll be quite a useful thing. And then you can see that each of the bigger asteroids has a top you can put on it with GridForge. Now this whole set is GridForge, and if you don't know GridForge, I absolutely adore it. It's really easy to swap out. You can pick tiles up, put them back in, all just really, really simple, which makes it great for RPGs. Now I tried playing Legion, and I am competitive, but I'm not competitive enough to bother about Legion. But I don't want to lose all the time. So I then started doing RPGs. So this is definitely more squarely aimed, this end, at the RPG end. But the other end, the 2-foot square modular tunnels, which are like the interior of an asteroid that are coming, they are most definitely going to be great for any sort of a skirmish game, skirmish size. You could make an entire asteroid for, say, Legion, but it's not, I would say, ideal for that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's, I don't know, it's been fun. I have enjoyed making the asteroids, but now I'm onto tunnels. And then this week I am making a print-in-place space worm. It's going to be articulated to fit in the round tunnels. And the idea is that the space worm goes, this is a space worm tunnel. You can see he's sort of hollowed it out. Right, okay, line those up. He's kind of hollowed it out a bit. So, but it will be circular. It's obviously going to be open topped for most people to play with, but you'll have the tops if you want to cover it for fog of war. But then once the machines have come through, the worms excrete something which makes supercrete, and they come through and they mine it by scraping it out, and then you get this, it has actually got a texture on it of like a I got from a thing, and you can see it's got this sort of scraped texture, which I got from somewhere like one of the Channel Tunnel things. I think it was actually a French tunnel or a Swiss tunnel. But yeah, so those will create a slightly wider one, and there'll be a machine that will go in there, which will be like a rotary machine. If you've seen my sewer district, the front of it will be very like the front of the sewer cleaner. So yeah. So what does chat have to say? Polite, yes, I'd actually really like to do more crafting in game 2. I just can't find the proper starting point. My problem is too many ongoing projects I feel I should finish before I start anything new. So I built a lat eye, which is the sort of Coruscant police, Clone Wars, Bad Batch style assault vehicle. They chase Ahsoka in them and that kind of stuff. And I built one and then discovered the interior. I wanted to light it. The interior has to be completely built and sealed up to put the exterior around it, which seems really annoying. So I kind of painted using my Gundam markers that I had, which were quite cool. And I've got some Tamiya enamel washes, the panel liners, and I used those to make it stained and look like it was a proper thing. And I primed it. I need to do the LEDs on it. And I did that, and that was like a new project. And I'm like, oh, I've got about 50 old projects. So I'm going to get the old projects and start taking them over and painting them. But first, I need to do Satisfactory and get it out of my system, which means I need to finish Nuclear. I need to finish Phase 5 and then do Phase 4 and then do Phase 5, including time crystals, Fixonium, dark matter residue, something like that. So that's just kind of my obsessive nature coming out. And then we'll go back to watching SG1. I'm not watching it full time. At the moment, I'm actually watching, because I rarely just watch TV. I'm watching The Mandalorian, ready for the 22nd of May. And can I just say, whoa, Maul. I'm a huge Maul fan. In fact, he keeps his eye on me. If you remember my nameplate video, the only video I have managed, this was the one that failed. This is my Maul nameplate. So when I go to my printers, I've named my 3D printers Ben and Maul. And so this was a failed one. I actually printed it the wrong way around. So, measure twice. Actually, look which way up it goes. So anyway, the spare one sits on the desk and stares at me. But wasn't Maul great? That's where I'm going with that. Maul was just great show. If you haven't seen it, and you don't like cartoons, you're lost. It's brilliant. I do think Star Wars animation is the best thing about Star Wars. Right, and then Polite says, instead, I spent the last few days playing around about some new paints for weathering, etc. They were only limited success. Well, so I do have a new video of an old model. Well, that's good. And I think it's worth saying that playing around is how you get good results, especially with new paints. If you just carry on doing your old methods, it may not work. You may not discover the amazing type of results you could get with these. Okay, so I can see it's stating the obvious comment for the algorithm, and Doug, something else for the algorithm. So guys, if you want to really boost the algorithm, go press like, subscribe and notifications, because I don't do any YouTube, so YouTube tends to punish you for not having weekly updates and putting stuff out there. And as a result, I have been on 95,000. I think I went over 96 and I'm now back 95,899 or something when I logged onto this. And it's really depressing because I'd like to get the 100,000 plaque. So I need to get 5,000 more subscribers. So yeah, okay, guys, I do need to get some more videos out there, and you'd think that I'd get around to it, but I don't. So I'm hoping that perhaps when I was doing Scut City I would do it, but to be honest, I design full time. I do look after my elderly parents as well, which seems full time but isn't. So I'm around there at lunchtime and every evening meal, that kind of stuff for my mum. So my poor sister had to get dropped back early today so I could make it for this. So anyway, yeah. And then I play Satisfactory, and that's my life. Right, so Stephen says, oh right, there's no emoji for cracker, says Polite. Oh, no cheese cracker emoji. That's true. Instead, you've got chocolate biscuits. So Stephen says, I'm finally back at work after a month on sick with bad back. Oh, bad backs are bad. Yeah, they get you down, don't they? Because they're just, oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad you're back at work, and I hope it carries on mending. So whilst I was putting together the last month, I put time lapse on again on my printers, which I haven't normally got. So I've got a slight video for this evening, which I'm going to do now whilst I remember. It's only about half an hour long, so I will be pausing it. I need to shrink myself down a bit. There we go. And so the first thing is I'm going to talk a lot about various different things about asteroids and stuff like that. But what I'm really talking about is my process for designing, and I've talked a lot about that. And I do hope that over the next few months I can actually get this done. I want it out mid-June, and then I want to spend maybe towards the end of the year, I'd like to be able to get back to doing some more modelling. Satisfactory out the way, and then I won't touch a video game again. The Zero Company's coming out in the autumn, but I won't touch a video game for ages. And what I want to do then is sit in front of the TV, watch the next 8.5 seasons of SG1 that I've got to watch, and then paint all my minis whilst I'm doing that, assemble them and paint them. So far I've assembled like 3 or 4 boxes, and that's a win-win for me because it gets rid of an entire triple wardrobe full of boxes of kits, because they'll all be put together, and it'll be using time where traditionally I would have sat on my laptop and worked, but actually because I've spent all day doing creative stuff on a Mac, I'm struggling to do the same creative stuff of an evening, because just trying to use Blender on a little Mac on your lap is not that easy. So especially when actually I have a lot of textures when I'm doing, say, asteroids, which can sometimes blow the thing up, and it just randomly crashes. My old Mac is quite old. Well, I mean, it's not, but it's a Mac, so they go out of date really quickly. So yeah. Oh, and Stephen says the Cabin Fever was a killer. Oh, I don't know. I would happily sit there and play Satisfactory all day, or read books, or watch Star Wars. There we go. Polite says you get used to it. I've been out of society for a very long time now. It's not always a good thing. I miss working. I was a real office bunny. I worked in an office for 25 years, and I do miss the people. I'm lucky I see John at lunchtime most days walking the dog. I see my mum every lunchtime, and I see her in the evening. So I do see people every day, but I miss that meeting random people in the kitchen, chatting and finding out how things are going. I miss having a team. Team meetings where I would chat a lot because I'm a chatty person. But, I miss that. But you do get used to it, I think, very quickly. And I wouldn't want to travel to work now and, just not where I want to go. I'm very happy. I actually cancelled my institute because I was a fellow of the Chartered Accountant, whatever, FCA. I've cancelled all that because I'm not going to go back to accounting. I'm doing this now, but I don't earn enough money, so it's a bit of a rock and a hard place. Jeffrey Cooper 8408 just started watching SG1 again myself, episode 3 after this. I think we're halfway through 2, but we haven't watched it for a couple of months, certainly not before I went on holiday. Doug says, I found lockdown interminable. I was going stir crazy by the end. See, for me, lockdown was an interesting one because I quit my contracting job. I got to the end of the contract, is the truth, and did not renew and did not go for the permanent job, which after 4 years, they finally recruited. I didn't go for my boss's job, which is actually the one I probably should go for, because you're normally, if you're contracting, you're often contracting a level below the level you would go for a permanent job on from a salary point of view, just because they need someone who can come in and just set it up. And I've been back and forth across the 4 years. I'd do a contract, leave for 3 months, come back because they've not filled the post and they still needed people. And I really enjoyed the people. I still keep in touch with a few of them. But I then changed and became a content creator, which I wasn't very good at. And this is going to sound really funny, and it is a life lesson that I don't think everybody learns, but I had to learn. I had to learn how to fail. So, I'm going to put me back on because I'm really small. I've always been successful. I did well in exams, very academic, had a good career, never bothered about my career. So if I didn't get a job, I wasn't worried. Became a contractor because accounting's quite boring, but still was always able to get a job. I wasn't out of a job for long. I had a very successful life. I've got a nice house. And then I became a content creator. And with lockdown, it did okay. But as lockdown ended, suddenly I got all these messages from YouTube going, this video is not appealing to your viewers as much as your previous ones. Try doing something different. And I just got really negative from all of the YouTubing that would tell me that I was failing. Every time I put out a video, it wouldn't do very well. It would go in at number 10. And I really struggled with that. My friends all disappeared into this lockdown hole of, we did well at the beginning, but then when they started to go back to work, they all really struggled. And I didn't see anybody on FaceTime or anything even. Whereas my friends who were going back to work were seeing people on FaceTime. And I don't think lockdown to me was a problem, but I did lose contact with almost all my friends from work, because I was no longer in a work. And my local friends kind of disappeared. We'd kept up for a bit and disappeared. And I was getting this constant messaging on content creation going, you're not really good enough. And I'd work longer and longer and longer and longer, and I burnt out. And burnout is real when you're a creator, but you just have to soldier through it. And I felt my quality was going down because I had to meet the quantity. I really sucked. And I was lifted up a lot by people like Ben from Second Dynasty, who I did a job for him. I overdid the amount for my Saverna Traveller video. I did his spaceship in a material he didn't design it for. Ended up changing it all because my FDM printer was really bad at the time and just wouldn't do the quality that I was happy with. And it was going to take too long because FDM's much slower if you're doing a big ship. And it was too big. I wanted a diorama. I didn't want a full-size playable spaceship because I didn't do terrain, really. It was something I moved into after that, partly because of it. But Ben really picked me up and was very supportive. And I started to get support from other people within the creator space because none of my friends got it. None of them are in this line of work. Most of them work with children or are in travel. Well, they just struggled over lockdown, as you can imagine. So I had this thing where I was getting all this negative feedback. I have never been so low in my life. And I had to learn to fail. And it's a lesson everybody has to learn at some point. And if they don't, you're going to hit a point where you can't just, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you work, no matter how hard you push, you just won't succeed at something. And you'll fail. And if you don't know how to fail with grace, or you've never experienced it, it's a real life shock. And that to me was the struggle with lockdown, was I was going through this failure and it carried on for a year or two around all that period. And eventually Ben was encouraging me into things like 3D design. And I looked at model railways, which are very specific. I don't live in the US, which is where I actually modelled. I wanted to do scenery, but it's actually quite hard to work out what to 3D print. A lamppost. But it has to be the right lamppost for your era, at your time. And it was ceasing to excite me. So I'd been watching more and more terrain stuff, and I actually went and started to play some games like Legion, which is why I moved into terrain, because actually designing terrain does excite me. I get excited about designing hypertube tunnels, though this one does just look like a pile of rings. I get excited about designing asteroids. I get excited about watching Star Wars. I have fallen asleep in so many train videos, it's unreal. I don't fall asleep in Star Wars videos. So over time, I realised that the thing I love more than actually creating scenery is designing. I love that initial part of the project. I actually don't even need to finish some of the projects I've designed. I've got more scimitar on the side over there that I enjoyed the design process. It will get done eventually, but it's too close to prototype to sell. So that's why it's not been done. And the guy who wanted it, Kelwan, hi if you're on, Kelwan, hi, decided he did some other stuff. So he's gone down a different avenue anyway. But I realised that I love the design process, and I realised that I don't love video editing and I don't love content creation. I wrote a book and I don't love the process of writing. I don't like the process of videoing. I do love the process of designing. So I changed my job to something I loved. I did not give up a really well-paid finance contractor job to do something I don't like. I may as well go and do accounting and earn loads of money if I'm going to do that. I gave it up to do something that drove me with passion. And I found out what that thing was. And for me, it's designing. It's 3D print designing. I love creating whole worlds. I look forward to filling Scut City with models and designing stuff. But actually, to me, the fun is in the design, not necessarily in the painting. I do like weathering as well. But I find it all a bit of a rush at the end trying to get through. So I think it's been an interesting journey for me. It's been a lot of self-awareness about what I like and going for that. I still hate marketing. I still hate doing the whole business side of the Kickstarter. I do my accounts quarterly now. I'm an accountant, I used to do them daily. Just, catch up. I do them quarterly now. I don't spend as much money. I've learned to live on no money. I do not worry about money because I just cannot worry about money. And being a contractor for quite a few years before got me used to uneven money and having periods of unemployment and not having as much. But when it did come in, at least it came in. And I've had to learn so many lessons doing this. It's been fascinating. And I do recommend to everybody, don't do your hobby as a job unless you're willing to lose your hobby. Why do I play Satisfactory obsessively? Because it's not modelling. Because it's not my hobby. It is a hobby, sorry, it's not my job. And my hobby that I love is now my job. And I do something I love all day, but I need to do something different in the evening. So, anyway, that's me. In a nutshell, my journey to where I am now. So for me, lockdown, I struggled. But I struggled for very different reasons, I suspect, than the majority of people in the country. And my friends weren't there when I needed them the most because they were all struggling as well. But my family were there. And at the end of the day, if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be able to do what I do now. Because when I struggle, my dad will put money in my account. That is the truth of how I survive, earning very little. And I had this debate with John in the park. My mum went to M&S the other day to buy stuff for my sister. And I rang her up and said, could you get me some presents, some smellies for Trish? And I thought, I've run out of shower gel. Shall I say to mum to get me some shower gel? And I thought, no, because shower gel from M&S is probably £4 or £5. But I can get it for £1 from Tesco's. And my lifestyle is pound Tesco's. It's not my faith in nature, which I bought once at half price. Lavender and geranium, £6 a bottle shower gel. It's £1, perfectly good Radox shower gel. Just as good, it still gets me clean. And that's the difference you have to come to if you're going to do this as a job. You have to learn. You won't get everything, but what you do all day is fulfilling. There we go. So, stating the obvious, I was a traffic warden. I don't miss meeting people. Yes, I bet people really didn't like meeting you. Oh, bless. Oh, dear. Stephen says, started a new layout recently in TT120 scale, German outline, only a tiny one that I can take to exhibitions. Oh, that's brilliant. I love exhibition layouts because you get a chance to talk to the people and, see them. It's great seeing things in a magazine, but seeing them in person, just so much more interesting. Doug says, I now work from home, but there's the regular work thing. Yeah, it is. But it beats probably being in a little plant room in the basement of a building, doesn't it, Doug? Tim says, I was hybrid working before the pandemic, so I was very used to work from home. I have an active social life, so I get my people interaction that way. I think that's important. Actually, Tim and Doug, who literally just comment there, whoop, part of my social life. We're part of an RPG crew with John and Mike, who's not on here, and we play RPG on a Monday night online. So actually, I probably see them more than anybody else as little miniature figures. And, you know, one thing I have learned is in this job, the people who support you as a creator are the people who understand what it is to be a creative, and they're almost all online. You know, if I was really struggling, I have one or two people that I know I could go to and just go, oh, yeah. And they'd understand because they've walked the same walk. Now, my other friends would like, oh, yeah, and they'd be very supportive, but it's a different type of understanding. They wouldn't be able to tell me how to go forward because, you know. But I used to work from home on a Friday. I have hot desked and worked, and I'd had 3 months off a lot. So I was used to being at home doing like YouTube stuff. So a thing I've noticed over the last 5-6 years since there, I used to be incredibly driven, deadline driven, my hobbies of an evening, driven in front of the TV, always working. And I still always do something. I don't just sit and watch TV unless it's The Mandalorian at the moment or Book of Boba Fett as we're doing now, because I'm watching it for inspiration. Obviously it's work. Kidding. But I'm a lot less driven now. I'm like, I do this all day. I cannot be 200% all the time. I just can't cope with it. And no matter how much I try and sit down, I plan out, I still have probably one doctor's or hospital appointment every week with somebody. I still have to go around and cook lunch. I still have to go around and cook supper. You know, there's still all these things that are going to come in. And so I could do going to bed earlier and getting up earlier and getting more done in the morning. But, you know, apart from that, I'm very happy. Doug says, Kipling's if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. I think that's true. I heard a story once of a lady who, it was some home group leaders from church meeting, and she said she'd met this guy who'd completely lost his faith because he'd been a really successful businessman, and then he hit something where he didn't get a job that he expected to get, and he couldn't cope with it because he'd never, and he just completely lost everything because he couldn't cope with getting that one, not getting the one job. And I think it is, yeah, it's a difficult thing for some people. Stephen says, it's like I say, the word fail is just an acronym for first attempt in learning. And it is true. I have failed at a lot of stuff, but learnt. 3D print testing. So I have print testers. Doug and John are both print testers for me, plus a few others. And they are so helpful for things where I go through when I go, yeah, that works on my printer, or I can live with that. There's one thing I still know, actually, I looked at it when it printed and thought I need to fix. But generally, having somebody else look at stuff and help has been invaluable. But I test print everything. A lot of people don't. A lot of creators out there do not test print. I can tell you that because I've printed some of their stuff and gone, you have patently never printed this because there's two walls that intersect in the same space and they can't physically fit there. And this doesn't go together properly. You know they haven't test printed, but I have test printers. I test print every single piece. And I think it's really important because quite often I get them wrong. I think the last live stream I did do was me getting the gym wrong all the time, and it's still not a great printing piece probably. And sometimes you print and everything's perfect. These ones, yeah, first time print came out fine. These ones, top's really bad. I don't know if that will show because the light's really bad. If I can get an angle, it's all shattered at the top. It's not great. I would normally check for that, but actually I knew when I put this to go, I was checking the front texture because I'm actually going to put texture on the back. So these won't be the final prints anyway. So yeah, there we go. Right. Ooh. Let's go look at chat because I saw it stream past. Polite. I recently read in a comment, you haven't failed. You've just found 1,000 ways that don't work. That's true. And they always say, you're not ever going to be perfect at something until you've got the first 1,000 hours in or whatever. Aldi is the true path. Tim, that is a total non sequitur that I do not understand. Stephen says, there's no point in keeping up with the Joneses. Joneses are skint. I had a boyfriend that used to say, 2 cars on the drive, no food in the freezer. Yep. So Doug says, working from home is much cleaner, better noise levels, more daylight, less social interaction, which is a good thing if you're not into people. But yeah. Tim says, noise levels are fine until somebody starts up outside the window with power tools or a petrol lawnmower. That is the one problem of working from home in an area like this, where loads of people have gardeners in the week who come and mow the lawns, or everybody over lockdown had building work, myself included. So as soon as one set would finish with the building work, another set would. So I had neighbours, myself or the other side, and we went back and forth. And so they got done, these got done, then they got done, then I got done, then they got done again. And you're just like, oh, wow, it's never ending noise. And I felt very bad. My neighbour does online training for people. He does it in person as well, but he does quite a lot online. Trying to do an online training course when my builders, and we're on a semi, so we're attached, my builders are cutting steels. It's not easy, or drilling steels is not easy. Digger, I missed you. So Digger's one of my moderators. Finally had a moderator arrive. Guys, you better behave now. He's there. Hi, Dig. And you have a blue shield, which I guess means you're a moderator. So great. Don't worry about being late. They've been well behaved. And the adult chatbot's given up on us. I don't have enough people, I don't think. Plant rooms, Tim. Pumps, boilers, air handling units. I was going to say, you should know that, Tim, because we had the discussion at RPG night. Plenty noisy. Hi, Boxcar Jerry. Good evening. Digger, you're late. Yeah, he is. Polite. Well, when you have a lot of personal problems, friends and contacts disappear quite automatically. It's not even a matter of malicious intent. It simply creeps in. I think it was very much linked to lockdown. But also a lot of my interactions on a daily basis in the day would always have been at work, which has disappeared, obviously, if you now work from home. Loads of people saying hi to each other. Aldi, when you were talking about getting shower gel from Tesco's or M&S. Ah, right, okay. Yes, Aldi would work as well. But there's a Tesco's in Knoll I can walk to. There is not an Aldi in Knoll anywhere except by car. So that's why. So Stephen says, I spend a lot of time on night shift. Life goes on for the rest of the world. Sometimes getting sleep can be tough. Yeah, my friend's brother is a pilot, and he was mum's lodger for a while because he flew out of Birmingham but is based out of Gatwick, and in the summer you got a bonus at the time for flying out of one of the regional airports. So he used to lodge with mum. And he moved house with us. She just told him he was the bedroom at the top of the stairs on my left, and he arrived in the middle of the night once, and she sleeps through anything. But anyway, he was also then flew out of Bristol Airport near my friend's, and he was asleep upstairs as a pilot, very used to sleeping, with his car on the road, and they wanted to re-tarmac the road, and he slept through them hammering on the door, and they were about to tow his car before someone finally managed to, wake him up. I would wait for anything, but I think if you are used to sleeping, then obviously he sleeps well. Right, so I am going to put the rest of the video on, but I distracted myself off very neatly a while ago. So what I wanted to do is, this is my medwing, okay? This is one room suggestion. And this is another room suggestion. Now, people asked for rooms so they knew what to print. But the trouble is, I just test print and put them together. I didn't plan them out. So if you look at this, there may be 8 plates here where you just choose 3 items from them. And it depends whether you want to do multicolour, single colour, double colour, or, if you can do just one colour, it becomes a lot simpler. But there's like loads of multicolour options. I found it quite difficult to put together. I learnt a lot about putting it together, but I didn't print like this at all. So I'm really hoping I didn't miss any pieces. I certainly haven't put any clips in. I presume everyone will just, print like 100 clips like I do. But I ended up with all these plates and made it look really complex. And this was almost like I do instructions, but it's in lieu of instructions of what each room is made up of. So it was, I found, quite difficult. So I'm thinking that I need to improve this methodology. And I've done the poll. I'm going to end it in 5 minutes. So if you haven't voted in the poll, which is, do you want to do multicolour printing? Then go vote quickly. At the moment, I've had 13 votes, which is very good. 62% in favour of, do you want to 3D print in multicolour? Yes. It's moving. It's gone down to 57%. No. And what I think is really interesting, because I design for both. I absolutely have people like John who test prints in black. And then I've got people like Doug who will test print in multiple colours, and Silverhurst is also test printing for me, and he's doing multiple colours. So, right, looks like everybody has voted. End poll, because if I don't end it, it gets lost. So, you know, it's there. I still think a lot of people are not used to multicolour, and it is very wasteful. And we'll see that in a minute when there's a shot in a minute about it. So anyway, right, let's play this. Oh, and Tim says he's a light sleeper, guys, just a drop of a pin. So quiet when you're around him at night. So I started with saying to myself, I want to procedurally generate asteroids. So I went and looked at Star Wars asteroids. This is what a Star Wars asteroid looks like. This is Geonosis, in case you're interested. I did actually do the Sonic Charge inspiration. Oh, obviously this is not, this is a different one. But this is the Millennium Falcon asteroid field. They're not particularly jagged. They are quite rounded. I guess they've bashed into each other a lot. I've actually done a mix of rounded and more jagged ones for a bit of variety, depending what people want. But you can see there's a lot of impacts, but they are generally quite rounded. If you were to go to a NASA thing, you would definitely see that most asteroids in our asteroid belt and surrounding areas are like rounded. They've had their edges bumped up. So I started off trying to do it with just a displacement, and I struggled with unwrapping it. So if you were to, I don't know how many of you understand Blender, so I'm just going to give you a quick lowdown on this. So I prefer in Blender not to sculpt. Partly sculpting's not a problem, but what I want to be able to do is replicate it many times on many different pieces. And sculpting is a once on that piece sort of jobby. It's hard to merge two meshes. And what I found on my first ever Kickstarter, I did the rock texture with a sculpt, or it was like sand texture for Tatooine. And it distorted the outside, and then it wasn't mirrored. And so it makes it slightly bigger. So you put in the sand texture and it makes it slightly bigger with dents in. I don't know, I probably could change it that it doesn't do that, but that's what it does. So I tried putting on here just a random rock texture that I have. And you can see how awful it looks. And one of the problems is it's distorting around the shape. It's a big issue. You know, you don't necessarily want it to distort. But the other thing is, oops, I'm just going to squidge back. I don't know if you can see it. Along here, right, I don't know, you can't see my mouse. So along the bottom of the 3 squares, which is where GridForge is going to go, sort of parallel to it, you can see a straight line. Somewhere you have to unwrap this because the texture that you're using is a picture in this case, because I want to put stuff on. So it's a picture, or it's got to unwrap it because I do it on UV. And if you don't, then it just doesn't seem to work. So I've spent a lot of time playing with this, and then I went down the rabbit hole of trying to do procedural asteroids using geometry nodes. That's out of scope for this video, you'll be glad to know. But I did produce something like this using geometry nodes. I'm quite pleased with this. I followed a video, I worked this out, I tweaked it then, a bit back and forth. I put in several more variables to make it more or less jagged. So I know a little bit about geometry nodes, and this was mostly about offsetting, and I used position as well on a geometry node. I felt quite proud of myself for working out the difference between the two and got this to work. And then it was off to test printing. Now, why this? Because I want them all to look similar, and I want them to be able to look like a family. So I want to just tweak things and it produces asteroids. I didn't want to have to sculpt them all from scratch. And actually, once I'd spent quite a lot of time getting the first one, all the subsequent ones came quite quickly. I print them in 2 halves. You can't see the join. It's printed in matte dark brown bamboo filament, 0.4 nozzle, 0.16 layer height. Yes, when you look at the top, you will see the layers, but towards the middle and side, I think it looks really good. It looks very much like the asteroids that you just saw. I know Blasted Samaflan said that he wanted it to be more jagged, so there are some more jagged ones in there just for the people who don't look at the source photos. But yeah, I mean, it's really uninspiring in some ways, but this is my potato, as I like to call it. I'm just going to pause it there and look in chat. Doug says, I voted yes, but I do prefer to only swap colours on a layer basis. I have struggled with that. I know that. But I've got one print where there are multiple colours in the one layer. And so I've generally given people options. So if you were to look at one of my print plates, we'll probably see them in a minute. There's generally a single colour, a 2 colour, and a 3-4 colour. But it is difficult. So the stars, we've seen some already. The starry plates, great, you can do a 1 colour swap. When there's asteroids on it, there's always 2 colours for 2 layers. But most things, what I'm trying to do is, actually for printability reasons, they're quite often separate. But I'm trying to make it, if there's a piece I feel should be a separate colour, like the drill bit, which I could have printed in place, but actually I might want to swap it for a laser, is the reason it's separate. Then I've done them as a separate part. So John says, I might try more colour printing going forward, having worked out how to get it to work on my printer yesterday. Oh, that's brilliant. John was struggling because he had to pause his and it wasn't letting him unload his filament. It just refused and wouldn't let the extruder go. So it was a different G-code. Was it M600 or something? So Doug says, until I get a tool changer induction nozzle printer. I'm with you 100% on that. Because this is my job, I'm just eating the waste, and we'll see it in a minute. And I'm a lot of waste. Tim, I'm undecided, Camp, because up to now I've not done anything that would benefit from multicolour, but now have a print to do where I'll use different filament for different parts. That's really cool. I'm actually designing something for Satisfactory's coffee cup. It's the coffee cup, and I'm designing a coffee cup, which I'll print in multiple colours. We'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges of that in a second, but I don't want this to be about multicolour because I think I talked about that 2 live streams ago. Tim says, I don't have the space for a proper multicolour printer. I always liked mine enclosed, which is, I bought one for the enclosure rather than for the multicolour, and it just happens to do that. Hi Timber, great to have you here. There's another moderator, hence his blue shield. Excellent, glad you could make it. Doug, the second moderator to arrive late. I wasn't saying anything. Polite says they look cool, Kathy. Digger says, shh. Doug, I want him to think I was on time. Well, Norm said it's Mothering Sunday in America. We had ours in March. It was on my birthday, so it was really frustrating. I didn't go out for my birthday. And there was the battle of, do I cook for Mum or does she cook for me? She actually cooked lunch for me because I cook every meal for her. So I'm like, Mothering Sunday, I could make you a meal, but to be honest, I do that every day anyway. Anyway, yeah, Timber, Digger only beat you on by a few minutes. So Doug, are we sure that Kathy printed these and just didn't go dig them up out of her garden? They do look a bit like it. I was, and I am, still worried they would look like giant floating brown objects. You can all use your imagination. Rittinkle, I don't know where I'm supposed to do my Rit Ink Ornas For what I mostly do, you need anyway some post-processing, including paint, so I never even consider using colour printing. It's just filament wasting and colour swaps. That's true, and I would be with you if I was doing this. But actually for what I want to do, which is show off 3D prints in their raw element without too much work, it works well for me. If I was trying to do a diorama, this absolutely would not be good enough. I would be adding layers of paint, mostly weathering rather than actual paint. I quite often now use this as the base colour and then weather on top. And then written cornice, and I mostly print only in off-white, which is best, as less prone to break compared to other colours. I guess because the pigments influence the material properties. Yeah, I find white is really difficult to see issues on, and to it can, because titanium is actually the white pigment is heavier than black pigment and bigger and it's more likely to cause wear. You can get really bad wear with some cheap white filaments through your nozzle, and generally bamboo hasn't been too bad, but I know other brands. John Games was saying he was eating his nozzles with his. I mean, nozzles are a few pence on the machine he was talking about, so it didn't bother him. I actually prefer to print in grey if I'm just printing anything, because it looks best in photos. It will not too dark, not too light, and it's easy to see things on. But for this, it's hard sometimes to see the print issues when I'm printed in black, for example. Timber says, I'm guessing moon rocks or lava. Asteroids. Asteroids. Remember what Gandalf says about lateness, folks. What, it's incredibly rude and you shouldn't do it unless you're him. Right. Wrong channel, Stephen. If we went mods, we would have consequences. Okay. So, John Bracken, yes, it was M600. I tried using a filament change in the slicer at first, and that doesn't respond to the unload command for some reason. Yeah, it does if a pause instead. Yeah, I agree. Doug says both white and black are difficult to see any details on. Totally agree. Medwing was in white because it was a hospital, and it did cause me quite a few issues as a result. But Tim says, but I assure you I will tell Tigger off and he will admonish me too. I'm sure you can have a mutual admonishment. Written cornice. Yes, I find pure white and black hard to see shapes. Grey or beige white is much better. True, very true. And Digger, yes indeed, we all have harsh words with each other. Well, not too harsh, I hope. I do want you to come back. Right, so a little bit more. The Star Wars is my mouse mat that's on my desk. So this is all just sat next to my keyboard on my desk. And then I was like, well, now I've got to put grid forge. In fact, I've got to put these grid forge grids. And this is where I ended up. This is a pad, but those grid forge grids, I've got to put them on top so that I can add the miners and machinery and the buoys and the comms relays and all that sort of stuff that are going on top of the asteroids. So first of all, I tried cutting out a box with just a rock texture on it. It looked a bit meh, if I'm honest. And this is a design process. There's nothing right or wrong with any of these options. Just some of them look better than others. And I wasn't that impressed with this one. I put it out on Discord. Just a thing to say. Discord's where I dump all this stuff rather than anything else. I tried sculpting it. I still wasn't 100% happy with this. And it looks really more extreme than it is because I've got cavity on, which really gives extreme contrast between the highlights in white and the lowlights in black for every single change in direction. So it just edge highlights, let's put it that way, if you're into minis. A lot of edge highlighting. And it's really cool. I like cavity as a display. And you can see that I think it's slightly better in it sculpted, but I still wasn't really feeling it. And to stick these in, you have to use nail clips. Oh, and this one was just flattened. I just flattened the top, which seemed a bit fake, but meant that it just had a small amount going around it. And actually the tile is a mil or two above that, so it sits on top. So if you put a tile in, it will fill the gap like that. So the tile is then sitting proud. And the tile will have the miner or whatever on top of it. So I was really struggling with this for a while, and I did test prints of each of them, which I'll put up whilst I look at chat. Written corners. I'd be curious also what plastic you use. PLA, PETGA, ABS, ABS. I always use PLA. It smells less. I had awful problems with ABS when I used it, warping all the time. I've now got enclosed machines, so I could probably use it, but it does smell a bit more. I have the printers running 24/7. I just prefer not to have them there. You know, I prefer something a bit safer. So on this one here, you can see there's a plain bit in which the grid drops in, and then there's those holes. To get your grids in, you have these special nail clips which you shove through, and it has that on the end, as opposed to a supporty clip which has that on the end. So you just shove it through and it acts like a nail. I only ever put half of them in, and I pre-put them into the grid before putting it in place and then just push them along. So here we are, test printing. I don't know why I chose such big ones to test print, but these are my asteroids, and I test printed each of the items. So yeah. It's fun. There's going to be a lot of this. So I'm getting that you can combine colours in the same layer. These aren't combining colours, but you can. So it changes it and prints each colour separately. The trouble with these printers is every time it changes the colour, it dumps a huge amount of filament. These are the asteroid bases, by the way, these little black poles. They're as wide and as thick and as chunky as they are because they need to have a supported clip in top. At the moment, I haven't actually clipped any of my asteroids in, so when you pick them up, they fall off, which is fine. I can spin them around for various photo ops. There is the option to have a supported clip in there, but I think once it's in, it's in. So you can see there's the flat, the sculpted, and the just cut options. And these are test prints. I will end up with a lot of test prints. That's the sculpted one. It looked the best, but I just wasn't really happy with it. And I realised that I was lacking height to be able to cope with the wavy tops. Now I can change the top of this asteroid to be less wavy. I can choose that in the way I pick up the jaggedness. But actually getting a 4-inch, which is my biggest one, wide top on and still making it within 180, that was the flattened version, just looked a bit weird. Within a 180, which is an A1 mini. So I didn't want any of these asteroids to be bigger than a 180 millimeter square. So they will fit on a small printer. So, and that's a point that I probably will try and bring out a bit more than I normally do in the campaign, because these are quite big, but they'll all fit in an A1 mini or any other brand that only has a 180. So this is with these in. I was like, where? And then it occurred to me that whenever you're going to put a miner down or a comms relay, you don't dig out the asteroid to put it on. You wouldn't blast out a hole to put it on. No, you would put a pad down that would flatten the surface, and then you would put it on the pad. So these are still random test prints. Yeah, I showed them to my friends. It's my lounge with lightsaber, because you never know when your Sith might appear. So you can see it's still not getting the pads. That's what I decided the response was going to be. I was going to put down a concrete pad, which is what, in fact, these sitting here are. This is bone white, which I'm using as my concrete colour. It really needs weathering down to look good, but I think it looks better than this. So anyway, a few more of those. Doug says he prints in PETGA. Yeah, I only ever used PETGA up, really. I've never properly printed it. Jeffrey says walnuts. That's what they remind me of. I'm glad they remind you of walnuts. Very big walnuts. So there was a pad going in, but I actually then realised I needed to make them removable because I wanted them to be a separate colour. And this is where I've done it. Now, if you're going to paint, you might go, I don't need these to be separate. I'm going to paint it. But if they're separate, you can take that outside and rattle can it. You can airbrush it and not have to hand paint it and worry. You can just slot it in place and you're fine. So instead of having one that's integral that you now have to hand paint, it's made that you will have to hand paint that because, look, it's attached. Now you can print it separately and slot it in place. And that means it just becomes a lot easier. So having got the asteroids to that level, I went away and did my starry bases. Now these are actually slightly displaced. So there's a displacement map over the night sky. And then they're printed black with just a couple of layers of white on. Some of the stars are only one layer. Some of the whiter ones are 2 layers. And I used basic rather than matte. I always print in matte because it looks better. But basic is slightly more translucent. So it means that the ones that are 1 layer look slightly less bright than the ones that are 2 layers. And it gives it more depth. Doug says it's possible to change colour multiple times in each layer. But with the printer I use, it carries a lot of wastage with a lot of filament used on each colour change. Yeah, mine is really wasteful. I've got a picture of the bin at some point. You'll see it. Timber says, I wish I could do textures like that in CAD. It is a displacement map. So what that means is it is a picture that I've actually found on the internet or created myself. And it's created the texture generally. But the asteroids are geonodes and they use 2 textures. They use a noise texture and they use a Voronoi texture. A Voronoi texture is basically a random set of round sort of black to grey to white, holes. They would look like Edam cheese. And you can use a colour amp with geonodes to define how quickly they go from black to white. And if it's white, it sticks out, and if it's black, it goes in. So it becomes a really good way to do the craters and sort of divots, or to stick out some texture. Now, I actually think the brown to the cream, it's a bone white, is a bit too stark. But I may, if I feel like it, get out my sponge and weather them down. But because I can take them out and just do the sponge separately, it will make it really quick for me to paint these should I want to. On the other hand, because it's for a Kickstarter, not for a diorama, I may not paint it because then people can see what they'll get if they were just to print it themselves without painting. And a lot of people I know don't feel comfortable about painting, or they're going to paint it completely from scratch. Anyway, you can see there's a huge variety of, there are 21 asteroids because I realised I'd designed 3 2x2s instead of 2 2x2s and 2 3x3s. I didn't do 1 3x3. So I had to go and design another 3x3 because I've got plans. So there we go. Necropolis XL, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Well, good evening to you too. And then everyone's saying hi. Stephen, washes really make a rocky surface look the part. My only problem with washes is they bring out the layer lines. They really bring out the layer lines on 3D prints. So, yeah. I had a debate whether I should put the white stars on the black uprights. But A, they wouldn't then fit in the asteroids if they were sticking out. And B, it's a lot of colour changes. So I decided not to do it in the interest of not having 1,000 colour changes. So it becomes easier for people to print. Timber, it's not applying the texture. CAD can't handle that many tiny shapes. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Blender struggles a bit. I went from having 40 gigabytes of RAM and crashing semi-regularly doing my concrete textures for training ground. I just crashed the whole thing sometimes. Not on this computer, but anyway. And then I went up to 64 gig, which stopped it crashing out the whole computer, which wipes the temp file, including your autosaves, which is annoying. But instead, I'm now on 128. I got a new one which does textures fine, but even then it still wheel spins. So this is a 3-colour print, and on 2 layers it will swap 3 times. But because if it starts the layer on black, it will swap to white, and then it will swap to brown. It will do the next layer's brown, then swap to white, then swap to black, do the next. Oh, actually, I think there's only 2 colours. So there's black, brown and white on some of the base colours, just because that's the way the slicer works. Even though it shouldn't, it puts in some depth, especially on the stars, just to make them more coherent. So these are my print plates. These are just my working print plates and I think they're in there for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but here we go. So this is, just half of what I had to print on my first round of test prints. Doug says, it's not that I don't want to paint, I just haven't got time. It would interfere with my reading time. That's very true. So I'm starting to build them up. And partly because I'm trying not to show renders that much. Ooh, we're on to mines now. Let me just pause this. Because I'm trying not to show a render, I could show a render, this obviously isn't a finished project, like this as part of the Kickstarter. But with all of the AI issues and people whatevering, I like to show these are my models straight out the printer. You can get the same result straight out of your printer. And I think that's where I am at the moment. Interestingly, Multiverse was asking on Instagram earlier, what were creators and people's views on colouring renders? He took them into Photoshop and coloured them. Personally, I just colour them in Blender. Obviously, he's not using Blender then, and I can do coloured renders really simply. But I don't really like doing renders because then I've got to pull everything from STLs, create them, and it's just so much faff when I've already got it created as a model. So I tend to maybe only use them for instructions. But this, again, is a geometry node. So it's a really simple geometry node. It creates an icosphere. It then takes the points of the icosphere and turns them into faces, drawing in between. And you can see there's some pentagrams in there, not just hexes. And then I can shove a cylinder pointing out at an angle, all using some very complex node arrangements, which I had to learn. So yeah, but this is where I'm going, mines, plus some test printing. Stephen, I wonder would layer lines be an advantage when representing sedimentary rock? My only thought is that sedimentary rock should probably be a little bit more rounded. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. Doug, yes, Ben was so annoyed that people thought his print photos were renders. That is the trouble. I don't think my photo quality is as good as his, so mine definitely don't. Now, if you remember your Attack of the Clones, you'll remember Jango Fett's Sonic Charge. This is based on that. It's not identical because his is, I was actually watching The Mandalorian and they use it again then. His is flat in the middle, but the ends, etc. is very simple. And the biggest problem with this was getting the prints to actually print neatly work out the print direction for it so they'd actually print it. And you can see here, this is what they look like. Maul at this point decided AMS slot 1 wasn't going to register the thing. So it kept stopping the print and saying, there's nothing in there. There is. AMS slot 1 is now empty till I take apart his AMS. Now, this will be another example. If you want to do multicolour, you print these in 2 colours. If you don't, that silver one was the interior to the Sonic Charge. For these, if you want to print only in 1 colour, you'll have to paint. But John actually, he just did his test print of these, not these, just the plain starry ones. And he used a white paint marker to do the stars. Look really good. You know, the stars are there, they're slightly bumpy, but they look really good. So it's worth saying that all the time, if you want to paint, having them split is a printability issue. It helps printing, but it also makes it easier to, split it and print. Also worth saying that generally there is a combined single colour option for those people who don't want to do multicolour at all. So the sonic charges do have a it's 2 pieces, 2 halves print that you can just shove together and not worry about it. And I think there's a lot of people, looking like this 40% of people, who would probably just want that option. But sometimes you want to maybe do an effect. So you want to be able to paint. It's so much quicker to paint a light effect on the inside piece if it's separate. Good morning, Monique. Good morning from Future Kathy and team. Hello, great to have you with us. So how's Brisbane? Probably sunnier than here, where it's gone dark. So we're on Asteroids still. Now, this was only supposed to be a small part of the Kickstarter, just a few asteroids, and I did get carried away. You can see some of them are rounded, some of them are a little bit more bumpy. And all I did was change 3 or 4 parameters on my geonodes, my geometry nodes, which created the asteroids. I did go in and do it all from scratch. It's not like an AI thing, before anybody worries. But yeah, it is. It's definitely easier to produce something like this, which doesn't have to line up. When it comes to doing something like this, I actually did a completely different technique for these worm tunnels, which I'll talk about in a minute when we've got through these. 6:17 a.m. That's not a time I'm up ever, Monique. So that's impressive, very impressive. I go to bed later and get up later now. I don't have to get out for work. As you can tell, I printed a lot of asteroids. I do test print every single thing. Even though these probably wouldn't fail once I've done one, I actually didn't test print the plain tops. I assumed they'd work if the other tops worked. So I've got the ones that have got a grid inset into them. You can also do as a plain top without it. Aha! So now we see some of the other stuff, the more sexy and exciting bits, the miners starting to appear. So for print reasons, the orange and the black print separately. I did a very fiddly version where the legs are separate and it's standalone. I did a section where the legs and the drill are together, and there's the grid forged tile version where it sits on the tile. And I wanted it so that, hypertubes. I wanted it so that you could print in multiple colours if you wanted. But if you didn't want to, the option is there. There's a complete piece you can just print. And I think in this world of transition between people painting, people not wanting to paint, I think it's good to have both options on every single thing. Because generally, if you're going to split them for multicolour, you've already had to design them anyway. So you may as well do both options. 6:17, says Tim, only exists on days that I have an early flight. And that's very true. Doug says they look great. Thank you, Doug. Monique saying hi to everybody. Now, I have to say, I quite like these. I think they're a bit crowded upstairs. I showed the video. I'll put it on again at the end for people who weren't on, which is all my moderators. Yeah. Oh, sorry, there's going to be a lot of pictures. So this then is a 3D print. This is actually a render. Well, it's not. It's just I materially coloured it in my slicer. And I could do each of those items as different colours. Oops. Yeah. That didn't print. You can see. Oh, no, not happy. It amazes me. So I then tried it again and it did print. But I thought to myself, really, I'm going to put a brim on it. So this is the brimmed version. So the version on the multicolour 3MF is the brimmed version, so that I know that it will print for people. And this is Ben and Maul printing. Generally, Maul is printing black and white. Now, okay. This, I'm just going to replay that. This was a bridging issue. Oops, too far. So bridging is when you have to stretch from one side to the other. And I had it at 50 milliseconds. I've actually slowed it down to 30. Whoops, we get these fails again. And I knew for these miners, I had to put a hole down the middle so I could put the drill bit in the miner, because I want to be able to swap it to a laser one. But I can't put it in from underneath with a supporty clip because it would be too tall and wouldn't fit. So therefore, what I had to do was drop it in from above, which means I need a hole. Holes are very hard to print because the way a slicer prints here is it will print the outside, but then it prints the hole in midair. So the hole there, it would try and print in midair. I'm not joking. Doug said to me, none of these seem to work very well, Kathy. And he looked, and his bridging was literally doing circles like this, starting on the middle. There's nothing in the middle for it to attach to. So it just, what's it going to attach to? So on this, it wasn't bridging properly. Now, I'd already thought it might not, so this was a test. And then what I did was something that John from Second Dynasty taught me, was I put across a piece that goes across, which I just hadn't quite got right. I think it was 3 attempts before I got it right. And because it puts this piece across first and does a couple of layers before it tries to do the bit in the air, it actually has something for it to print onto. And it worked well. On the third test print, I nailed it. The second test print, I didn't quite have the heights right, but I put an extra layer in on each one and it worked. And then these are my drill bits, which will get swapped to lasers as a stretch goal. Hypertube still coming together. Those balls were a bit big, I felt. I've got smaller balls now. So yes, let's have a look. John Bracken, I did need a headset with a light and 2x lens on it for the white paint on the starry bases. Was fairly quick and easy to do. Experimenting with the paint pens on some of the other test prints. Oh, cool. Hopefully, photos of the bridging issues. Will you be trying metal 3D printing when it becomes available, Kathy? Probably not. Probably not. This is a metal colour, but it's not got any metal in it. It's iron grey, which is what I'm using for all of my machinery. So it's actually a shiny print. I was like, oh, will it show the layer lines? But it's not been too bad. You can see that this has actually got bits sliding across the bottom, but it's this hole that causes the issue. That was going right across the hole, those bits. So I fixed it. Doug says that sounds expensive, Stephen. It does, doesn't it? Monique, the ISS metal print their own tools. That is the ultimate for space travel, isn't it? 3D printing, sending something into space and 3D printing the spaceship with stuff that you've mined from an asteroid using my miners, which we could 3D print. So yeah, and then this is the lid for it. Now you can see I've just printed this in orange. You could print this perfectly easily in orange and just snaps into place. It's really quite cool. But the trouble with printing it in orange is that it's got hazard stripes and they don't show up. You'll have to hand paint them. So in a second, I don't actually know how long it is, you'll see it trying to print the multicolour. And that is a long print. It was a 14-hour print, I think, because I put quite a few on at once for the longest one. I mean, I don't mind running 24-hour prints, and I always run overnight. At the moment, I've got some 2-hour loads of clips going on. So this is what it looks like. There are 3 colour pieces if you print it separately. You could print them all in the same colour and paint them. The top prints and just clips on. And it's partly a print issue. It's easier to print these things the right way around. It's just easier to print, so it shows off. Now I could have made the top work, but the drill bit I needed to be separate because I want to make it swappable. And as I said, it wouldn't work with the height. I didn't think in my head it would work. So I just make the top come off and you can pull the drill bit out, which is quite cool. This is a buoy, I think. Yeah, this is a navigation marker. For those Americans, I'm not pronouncing it. You pronounce it differently. B-U-O-Y. So this is a navigation marker, which just sits on top of one of the small ones. I think quite cute. It was based on a deep sea buoy. So Doug says, I've thought of using a 3D print for lost wax casting, but I'll never do it. Yeah, I've had the same thought, Doug, and also like you, I'll never do it. Stephen, can't help but think it'd be more of an industrial process. I think 3D printing metal is. No, these are fun. Those are, this is, as you can see, multicolour and 3-colour here. So that little dish was my first test print. This bit here, this top, I did in 2 colours, orange and black. It makes the top look quite muddy. I probably need to flesh it more. But if you look, it prints this prime tower. That's the size of the prime tower as standard against that orange piece. It's the one piece it actually printed. And I mean, it looks really cool. It's got multiple colours on. I don't need to paint it. It's great for me. I'm doing this as a business. All that stuff it flushes is just a cost. And it literally just flushes it down the back half of it. So it has the prime tower, which is make sure that the nozzle has enough plastic in it to print. And it looks really cute when it's on. I mean, it's a nice looking print. It's a little liney on the side, I think. But you can actually sand back quite well. So, you know, I could perhaps sand it back. The stuff all looks really good. And then this is the amount of gunk you get coming out. Now this is just me emptying the poop chute, as they like to call it. That'll probably get us banned on YouTube for rude words, but it's what they call them. Oops, let me just go back to that. And that, really? I went back. Okay, I'm going to hit pause this time. So that small orange and black piece did not produce all of this, because you can see there's another taller dark piece in there. But this is mostly from that one piece, because that was about the only piece it's maybe from 2 prints, and it produces all of this. And sometimes it gets jammed in the back in your chute and then starts sort of melting into itself, which it did for me once when I had half an hour left on a print, didn't think that it was going to go so long, because it had a filament needed replacing, so it had gone longer than I expected. I was going away for the weekend to pick my dad up for something, and I had to get my mum, my 82-year-old mum, who's never seen my 3D printer really in person, she rarely comes around, go through and reach through, she's a shorty, she couldn't reach around the outside, into the poop chute on the back with the 3D printer and the print in the way, and try and wrench out, this was for the Medwing, wrench out some jammed up filament that was in there. She did a good job. It actually knocked the cover off the front, the jammed up stuff. So it can be a pain. So this is very much the downside to multicolour printing. And I can understand why people therefore don't want to do it. It's a lot of money to flush down the tube. I looked at some of the amounts. It will tell you on your slicer just how much you're going to lose. And you end up losing half to an equivalent amount depending on the size of your print. Oh, now I didn't mention there, but that giant turret that you might see printing at some point is actually from Severna Spaceport. I did it in grey there. This one I don't have any grey loaded, so it got done in the dark. And it is based on the Star Wars, I'm trying to think which one it was from. Bad Batch, I think, close-ups I looked at, but it's a standard Star Wars one. And yeah, it's quite cool. So this is again iron grey, and this is the comms relay. Now it's in 2 sizes on the base, just in case. These then are the dishes. I had a lot of problems with these dishes, and eventually I made a looser version, because when Doug test printed them, he found them a bit tight. And I think it's because the bridging sagged slightly. So I was losing the tolerance. These were the 14-hour print. They had colours on, multicolours, quite a lot of multicolours. So this is me testing, putting on my dishes. And they just click on. You just clip sideways. The ones at the top clip on with supported clips. And then at the top there's another one. And that was the random version. I've another picture in a minute, but I tried doing random seams to see if it would hide the seams. Oh, it was ugly. Ugly. So that was the underneath of mine. I know Doug had a problem with the underneaths of some of his. And sometimes it's that your filament needs drying or the filament isn't that great. but actually that's probably the top of mine. It's the top of mine. The underneath is underneath. But yeah, you can see it's starting to come together with a bit of colour going through. But at this point, I now kicked it out to my test printers, and they started to go through and do some similar prints on things that they fancy doing. You know, it's perfectly optional for them. And they find things that cause them issues, which means I then tweak them so they're better for everybody. And one example would be those test prints where I made things bigger. So this is my tops, and I did them so you can print them separately. This is another test print. I was amazed they print, but they do. And then here I'm doing a separate concrete pad base for them so I'm doing that colour. You absolutely could print all of this in the same colour. In fact, if I wanted to, I could make those central wiring a different colour, but I just couldn't be bothered to spend the money on it. So here, everything that I try and do, I try and keep as separate prints for the different colours, so it's easier for people, except the bases. And then it's just one change. It's one change from the concrete to the black. Though in this instant, there was a lot of multiple changes because there's silver and black through all of it, practically. Doug Jeffries, no bridging issues in 0G. That's true. That is true. Very profound, Doug. But also, you may then have issues with things not working because people expect to have gravity when some things are there. One of the problems is, yeah, I guess gravity causing stuff to sag, but some of it is just heat. More hypertube test prints. In fact, you'll notice I just have all the same colour together. So this has got some drill bits and whatever. And I'm trying to stick, I think I've got 7 colours in there. So this would be an example of a problem. That's how my slicer looked. Doug's just went round in a circle. It was really funny. So here I had this layer, but beneath it I'd forgotten to flatten out, I think when I changed something, the bottom of the dome, and it actually prints the bottom of the dome in mid-air. Now that won't print. So this is where test printing, Doug went, oh, mine doesn't work very well. I went and looked at it in slicing and saw that. So this then, scrapey tunnels. And that really shows them off a lot better than me waving it at the camera earlier because of the lighting. And again, this is what we're clipping onto. These are some of the sort of prints and how they're looking. So stuff like this back and forth is very much a design process thing. I need to be happy that it will print for anybody, and I'm really grateful to Doug, John, Silverhurst and other people, Shergle's in the past, you know, people who've come on and will test print and actually check whether things work. So the bottom one has a seam, the top one is random. Oh, it's ugly. It's really ugly. I was like, I thought this might be better. And I've actually done a version that has a less steep. This is quite a flat curve. I've got a version that's steeper so that it will print better for people whose printers are slightly less good at doing overhangs. So what I've done in test printing is just add a lot more versions in that are looser, or versions that are fewer overhangs. So this is me printing in multicolour a whole batch of stuff, but there are some black and orange hoppers and the tops, and then I'm printing asteroids again. These ones are going to be the half asteroids that we saw earlier. So always, you know, trying to make sure that there's something doing the sort of transition between my modulars and this. That one did not print well, guys, in the test group. I need to reprint it and tweak it somehow. So the question, does your slicing software not show where there were unsupported islands? Yeah, it did tell me there were floating islands and I ignored it. Whatever, I do that sometimes. The Prusa didn't show, I go on Prusa, didn't show an error, and then I probably just sliced it and printed it without noticing. I'd moved some stuff around. So, yeah, it's just, sometimes you're in a rush. So these are going to be the start of the tunnels. And I think when the machine's there, it will be clearer why that looks like that. And then You know, you'll all have to just tilt your heads to look at it. I think that's the end. Woo-hoo. So that is Asteroids so far. Yeah, it's an ongoing process. I'm really enjoying where I am with it and getting on with it and doing this design. It's been quite fun. So Doug says, yeah, but I wasn't surprised to see it unsupported. I was surprised that it didn't try to bridge it and just printed circles. It wasn't a long distance to the bridge. So two issues. On one of the dishes that Doug had, it did try and just print circles. Even when I got rid of that little bump in the middle that was unsupported, it still just tried to print a circular slice. It's an updated one. And so instead of actually trying to go zigzag across that would work, it went, oh, I'm just going to go like this. And it didn't work, surprisingly, because a lot of that's in midair. I don't understand it. It's a presser slicer. I don't use it, so I haven't tried to understand it. So I'm just going to put back the original movie of the stuff. So this is where we are so far. I think all of this is now in print testing. We've got some mines. We've got various different mines, depending how much you want them to be spiky and how delicate you are. We've got some half asteroids, of which there's a lot of options to choose from. We've got starry tiles, and we've got loads of floating asteroids. And I'm just starting work on the tunnels, which are going to be the modular section. And part of me would like to weather and paint this and bring out all the details in the rocks. But part of me also goes, I want these to be just as they come straight off the printer, so people know that they're straight off the printer. And this is what it can look like. I'm really colour theming it. You can see here that it's all, I mean, it's still 7 colours in there, but that's basically what I've been doing. So I realise I've got a cup of cold tea. Mm. 9:38. I'm just always a bit wary because I had that one video where I it played at the wrong speed and I put them on my hard drive because I had it on the NAS, and it just yeah. So I was going to fill the gap for the second half with another poll about who here has used AI to create stuff, to kind of kick that off, to see what people thought. I don't know if people would be interested in seeing that. I am not, I'm not a fan of AI because I don't think it's, you know, that great. But yeah, I'm seeing people starting to use it on Kickstarter, and I'm intrigued to see, would you buy it? I'm never going to touch it, by the way, because I want to create it myself. I don't want AI to do it for me. I want to do it myself. That's why I changed to this job, so I could do it myself. But yeah, I'm starting to see quite a few AI Kickstarters appearing. So, and then they discovered they couldn't do their pledge manager through My Mini Factory because it was AI produced. Cold tea is refreshing. It is. It is. It's cold green tea as well. It's not cold Indian, no, English breakfast tea. Doug, I'd be really tempted to dip the asteroids in a black ink wash. Yeah, I am. I am tempted. Doug, I'd avoid AI. I definitely want to avoid AI. I think someone summed it up for me when they said, you know, I want AI to do the boring stuff in life. I do not want AI to do all the stuff that's interesting. Tim says, I would not use AI for this kind of work. It seems to defeat the point of art and craft. 100% with you there. Monique, me too, Kathy. I avoid anything AI. Yeah. I've got friends that use it at work, and I'm like, work hasn't brought it in for me. So, Timbersurf, I tried AI the other day, but in an engine block. The results are too detailed to print in 1:76. AI doesn't have a designer's license to simplify for printing. Yeah, and then Stephen Cameron says, I'm not keen on artificial intelligence. I'll stick with authentic stupidity. It's what I do best. Great. Polite. AI is usually, in a sense, stolen material, and other people want to make money with it. Yeah, that is my worry. Actually, one of the guys who did 1001 sci-fi stuff on Kickstarter had said, well, I've trained it on stuff that's available open source and copyright free. And you're like, that's fine, but I'm betting that 90% of those people put it up before AI was an issue, and they've no desire for their work to be taken by you without being paid. And it might be copyright free, but that's only because the powers that be have deemed it to be copyright free, rather than it isn't in fact taking people's work. They're saying it's transformative, but you know, when Lychee delivered its have a model, I don't actually know what happened to this, have a model in the slicer, it was, you could create an entire Games Workshop model down to the sort of print ejection marks and the print mold lines. Yeah, that came from somewhere. It would be a good servant but a bad master. I think AI definitely is. I've seen people try it creatively and just say it can't cope. Someone, the guy who wants me to do the coffee cup, says he hates AI, but he produced something. And I looked at it and just thought, if you've got AI to try and produce that, it wouldn't print, because it produced something that was unprintable, effectively. So yeah. Doug says most copyright free doesn't allow for commercial use. It's true, and it's hard to work out how they're actually making their money out of some of this AI stuff, because they're not charging for a lot of it. But then it allows other people to sell your work. I don't know what happened to this either, but do you know Nerdforge? They did a really great book nook with a Pepper's Ghost library with like flaming stuff, made from scratch, really innovative, looked brilliant. Somebody just took it and sold it. I didn't watch the video, but I saw the thumbnail with them saying someone stole my stuff and is selling it. And what's happening on Etsy, I know, is that people are basically taking other people's work, recreating it using AI, selling it, and getting the original person who created it, sometimes banned when they complain, from Etsy for being a copy. And you're just like, oh, it's not good. Did you see that, Monique? I didn't actually watch that video. I just saw that it was there. But yeah, it's happening all the time. And I've read a lot of people complaining about their work being stolen. And I'm intrigued to see what happens next, because you can't keep taking art. So what I've noticed with Google is the AI summary at the top. And I saw someone complaining that their website is the thing that's used for the bulk of the AI summary on their stuff, which was something like Tours of Iceland, Geological Tours of Iceland or something. So all the information for it comes from our website, but our website isn't the top result that gets quoted. That's aggregators in the tourist industry. And they said, and now we're getting no visits to our website because everybody's getting all the information they want from the AI summary at the top. To which people were responding, going, oh, it's bad SEO, you should improve your SEO, that's your problem, blah, 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 blah. You shouldn't complain, it's AI. And I'm looking at it going, but I can see that they've got what they needed. They don't need to go to your website. You're going to stop updating your website. So what is the AI going to be quoting in future? Because the people that produce things aren't going to be around. But I sometimes feel that I'm very derivative with my work. You know, I looked at it, I said to my mind, oh, it's a sonic charge. I based it off the one Attack of the Clones. So many creators you are inspired by. Some of my favourite creators like Darkfire, inspired to almost completely create a Star Wars model, for example. It's not original creativity, but there's a huge amount of creativity in making it printable, in making a great sculpt, in getting a great dynamic pose. There's a lot more to it than just I copied the armour. So I think it's an interesting one on, you know, just actually making things printable and test printing is so important. Stephen says, if you create 3D print files to sell online, are you protected from copyright theft? No, short answer. Monique says she got no result from complaining. Yeah, I can imagine that. Doug says, AI theft happens with authors too. 3 episodic chapters get rewritten into ebooks by AI. Apparently there's a huge thing on Spotify where the amount of music up there is getting really just shot through the roof. We're talking like 60,000 uploads one year, 2 million the next year or something. And it's all AI music, and the only people listening to it are other AIs or bots, but they're getting the money. So they're taking from actual artists by taking the views or listens and getting their percentage of the pot, which is how apparently their royalties or payments work. So there's a lot of stuff. I'm intrigued because that AI campaign on Kickstarter did really well. It made more money than mine did. You've got 1,001 STLs. People are obviously very happy with it. It worries me that would mean that actually normal people get out-competed. Hi Silverhurst. I did mention you a couple of times earlier as a print tester, so great to have you here. Tim, AI is already feeding on itself. It also gets far too much stuff wrong while sounding confident. Yeah, well, it's an extrovert. That's the trouble, actually. I got all our stuff when we were going around the bottom of Kashik, and I'd just gone, I Googled the dice result rather than picking up the core book, which is just down there, because I didn't know it had the dice results in it. And I picked up it, and obviously I either looked at the wrong dice or it gave me bad results, and I got the wrong thing. Digger saying hi. What I'm noticing is people are starting to use it for some of the basic stuff. So an example might be printability checks or stuff like that. I don't know if it does them, but they're starting to use them for, some of that basic stuff. And I did a lot of, I came back off holiday and my Mac refused to connect to the internet, but my phone did. So I assumed it was a Mac problem. So I got in touch with Apple. The first helpline is a series of asking you exactly the same questions as on the support pages before you get kicked to a real life person. And you can tell they're a real life person from their language and the way they respond to you. And I don't mind in some ways, and it going down and asking me, that's not AI. That is literally something going, it's like a choose your own adventure. You ask it a question, it asks you a question. Is it this, yes or no? You type yes or no. It goes to, it's just a flow chart where it goes. That's not AI. There's a lot of algorithms now that are getting badged as AI that aren't. Yeah. Anyway, I don't mind that stuff, but it was annoying because I'd already been through it once on the support page. And it turned out it was my speakers plugged in the back of the Wi-Fi home hub had somehow errored on my week away, and it was creating a loop. So Doug, Temu has a lot of 3D prints of stuff that aren't licensed by their creators. That dragon that you see everywhere was actually created by MacGyver or MacGybeer, and I follow him on Instagram, and he doesn't get any money, I don't think, at all, for every single one of those dragons printed, and they're everywhere. I know there's been a thing at Comic-Con about trying to avoid loads of these basically AI or copied, stolen stuff that people have just 3D printed. I've started to go into shops and look at 3D prints of little kitsch items that you can pick up now, and I look at them. The quality of the 3D printing's never that great. I'm just like, I could do that better at home. I guess people don't all have a 3D printer at home like me. But it is a big worry as a creator that will someone take my job? And then I'm like, wow, it's not like I earn a lot of money anyway. But no, I look at it and go, yes, they can go and crib stuff, but they'll never be as good as, say, Ben or Darkfire Ty from Darkfire, or any of the other many people that I get stuff from, Galactic Armory, you know, they'll never be as good as them for actually just creating good stuff that people want that has been tested, and they'll certainly never be able to paint it for you. So, I am 51. I'm getting near the end of the session. I'm hoping the Asteroids will be out mid-June, but realistically, I haven't done everything I was supposed to do in my first week. So I finished that off this week, which was my second week of stuff. So all this was like 1 or 2 weeks. 2 weeks worth of stuff. It's 2 weeks worth of output. And I've probably got 5 more weeks to go. So I was hoping it'd be mid-June to get it in before the summer. Doctor Who talk time, says Doug. Actually, we've paused now. We got to Paul McGann. We haven't gone into New Who because we went on to SG1, so it should be SG1 talk time. But actually, we paused watching that because I played Satisfactory, which I won't bore you with. You basically build factories on an alien planet. It literally shouldn't be addictive. And someone somewhere said, oh, I think 99% of the people that play are men. Well, probably 99% of people in chat are men as well. So you'll all appreciate it. But, I mean, you just go and spend a lot of time putting down machines and clunking conveyors together. And I've got John back into it. He played it before several times by telling him that there's a passive mode so you can turn the alien creatures that attack you off. So they're now just really cute. Apart from the spiders, every time you go, like, for something really bad, there's like these really massive spiders, and even on passive mode they still jump on you. I scream. I've woken both my parents up from naps by screaming, so I put them as they do an arachnophobia mode because I was getting really freaked out with these spiders because I'm working in the swamp at the moment, which is full of spiders, and I know they're on the screen and they're not real. So you can put cat holograms on instead. So now, instead of hearing spiders skitting around, I just hear mew, 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 and mew, 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 mew. And there's like hundreds of these cats. But I know they're spiders dressed up as cats, so they still freak me out with these spiders dressed up as cats all around the bottom. So I'm building up really high, and I built really high, and there were blooming spiders on the top of one of the mountains, and I'm like, no! So, yeah. Yeah. Actually, Doug has just pointed out that there's only 14 of us here and Monique is one of us, so far less than 99% male today. That's actually true, Doug. I was over to the right and I've just gone left to see it's now up to 15 viewers. But yeah, we're skewing favourably towards the women today, so that's good. But yeah, I'm sure it isn't 99% of people playing Satisfactory are male, but there we go. Timber Cafe does all her own sound effects, so no AI here. You should treat me trying to do a Watto's accent, a Tweederian accent for the RPG guys. I swear it sounds like bad Italian fake accent. There we go. But yeah, I used to have a pet tarantula in college. Oh, my mum likes spiders. I'm just going to go, oh, I'm not a fan of spiders. Yeah, I can cope with little ones, and I don't really mind them in the house, little ones, but something that big. And I mean, the ones in this game are bigger than me, some of them. Some of them are small, and it's always a cave, and I had to run, even when they're on passive mode, they're still there. So I've run through all these caves with spiders, and I was getting more and more freaked out about them. Oh, Tim says your accents are excellent. You need to do R4 next. This is how sad I am. I listened to The Mandalorian for explosive. So I've been practicing my do type noises for the explosives. So I can make the guys walk down a corridor and just start doing sound effects for an explosive going off and see if they notice and get out in time before I kill them all. Yeah. But I do R4, but actually Doug always translates R4. R4's always beeping. R4's our droid. He's got a filthy mouth, mind. Potty mouth, R4. Anyway, I have learnt, and one of the reasons it's skewing why I do Gridforge and where I've moved away from perhaps doing more buildings towards the Gridforge style of stuff, is because I now play RPGs. And it's fascinating how much more I really enjoy doing an RPG. I GM it, so I games master it, but I prefer that collegiate storytelling over the sort of more competitive game playing. So yeah, Monique, this is why I don't talk in my videos on my channel. The model train community assume I'm one of the boys. Yeah, I guess my name on my channel gives it away. And I was known in person quite a lot because of who I was. So I've always, I put less of myself on there. But I've been on TV and everything, on 2 different ones. In fact, I got invited to go on a 3rd one, and I was just like, I don't feel I want to do another TV show. Ingenious or something. And they wanted me on BBC Radio 4, and then said there'll only be a small charge towards production and editing. I thought, you want me to pay to go on Radio 4? Is this a scam? He keeps chasing me. I don't know. I pay my TV tax, as the Americans call it, but my TV license, so I feel like I've already paid to go on Radio 4. Anyway, I think it's a difficult one to nail. I was always known as a modeler before, I guess, I got into YouTube. Tim says that's cheeky. You're an early YouTube starter, Kathy. Bravo. Thank you. But I have seen many people come in after me and go past me. It helps, but and Rebel Base Build recently made his 100,000, and I remember we did a collab, and he does some brilliant stuff. And the work people put in to get to the 100,000 is a lot more than I'm doing at the moment. So I need to get my act together and get a few more videos out there so I can get the last 5,000 subscribers to get my plaque before they pull them because too many people have got there. And on that note, like and subscribe, my 17 viewers, if you haven't already subscribed, because at the moment I'm going down more months than I am going up because they go through and they purge out old people and stuff like that. So, yeah. Stephen says, you'll always be remembered for the Model Railway Challenge, Kathy. I will. And Doug says, please say hi to Anthea. Yeah, not going to happen. In that I'm not going on it. Right, guys, so we're nearly at time. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate people turning up on their Sunday and coming here and, listening to me blather on about asteroids and lockdown and all that sort of stuff. I hope you found something useful. If you've been in chat, thank you for contributing. If you haven't been in chat, next time. We're not that scary. There's not that many of us. Pop something in there and say hi. And guys, have a great month till I see you next time. And hopefully you'll all get some modelling done. You may even get some 3D printing done and enjoy it. It's a hobby. It's supposed to be fun. So have a great one. And thanks to my moderators, Digger and Timber. Take care. Thanks, guys.